Thousands celebrate in Bolivia during the launch of the movement towards socialism presidential campaign. Rifles felt across Colombia after fugitive Senator Aida Merlano exposes deep ties between criminal groups and the right wing. And a horrific massacre in Thailand leaves 30 people dead. Hello and welcome to Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I am Estefania Bravo. This is from the South. Tensions continue to rise in El Salvador as President Nayib Bukele has militarized the area surrounding the parliament building after assembly members from the country's two largest parties refused to attend a session to approve a $109 million loan for his security plan. Snipers have been spotted outside of parliament as government supporters gathered for a concentration called by President Bukele to demand the approval of the $109 million loan. On Sunday, the extraordinary session did not take place as only 28 assembly members out of the 85 attended, with both the Arena and FMLN party refusing to take part. The parliament head lawmaker Mario Ponce has also announced that a session will be held on Monday. And the left-wing FMLN political party has responded to President Bukele's call for an insurrection.
If, by making illegal use of state institutions, our people continue to be persecuted, our lawmakers and their families simply, we are making you responsible for this. You can't play with this. If you think confrontation and could be safe, we only bring collateral damage to one side. You are wrong. You are wrong.
Thousands gathered in the municipal stadium of Sacaba in Bolivia's Chapare region for the official launch of the presidential campaign of the movement towards socialism party. Youth unions, along with campesino and indigenous movements of this region, joined the presidential ticket of Luis Arce and David Choquehuanca for the festive event. Throughout the weekend, citizens have also been calling for an end to political persecution of MAS leaders by the de facto authorities. During the rally, the candidates called on all Bolivians to participate in the May 3rd general elections, which will come a mere 6 months after the military-backed coup that ousted President Evo Morales.
It has been more than 500 years of lies, and we have decided to return to the truth. Our political instrument will bring us back to the path of the truth.
Our correspondent in Sacaba, Camila Escalante, has more.
Thousands are gathered here today at the municipal stadium of Sacaba to launch the Luis Arce David Choquehuanca ticket for the presidency, for the movement towards socialism, and the rest of the MAS candidates. This is a huge stronghold for the movement. The stadium is absolutely packed, and there were thousands of people from social movements waiting to get in. The event is just about wrapping up, but today's program began with a moment of silence for the martyrs, as they're referred to, who were killed in the November 15th Sacaba massacre. They were killed in a police and military operation not far from here. They're remembered for having given their lives in the struggle to return democracy and Bolivia's process of change, which was interrupted by the coup. It's clear that the bases here have come together to rally around the Arce Choquehuanca duo, despite rumors of tension within the ranks of the movement. People here say that they're going to be mobilizing support for the next 3 months to ensure that the right-wing parties and alliances don't get into office, despite fears that the election is already being organized under climate political persecution against leaders of the MAS. Festive day with candidates dancing and performances on stage, and we were able to hear from President Evo Morales as well as the candidates. President Evo Morales and the candidates made sure to urge the people not to react to provocation by the right wing with violence. That's all from the Municipal Stadium of Sacaba.
That was Camila Escalante in Bolivia. Moving on, this weekend, the city of Rio de Janeiro hosted a cultural festival to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Brazil's Workers' Party. Let's have a look.
With 1.5 million members, the Workers' Party is one of the largest political organizations in Latin America. In 2020, it celebrates 40 years of existence, and as part of the celebrations, the main progressive parties from Brazil came together in an event that could represent the formation of a historic front ahead of the upcoming regional elections.
A united front to defend democracy and the rights of the people. A front that can drive Brazil forward with the support of the people to defeat Bolsonaro's government.
If we can set aside our differences as left-wing parties and we can recognize that these times call for unity and political action, then we can decide on whether or not we can form alliances, but always prioritizing our common interests.
The Workers' Party is made up of millions of workers from across Brazil, of different genders, ethnicities, and social groups. Many of them took part in this festival, which also celebrated the recent liberation of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
During the time he was in prison, we were there in Curitiba to give ourselves to the fight, and today it couldn't be any different.
My children can go to school today thanks to Lula. If it weren't for him, we'd be in a very bad situation. He needs to be president again.
The euphoria rises as Lula arrives, accompanied by the former president of Uruguay, José Mujica. Their speech was aimed at the youth of Brazil, as under Bolsonaro, the nation suffers from an unemployment rate of 12% and 41% of workers work in irregular conditions.
The world will become a better place if the youth shows compromise, if they can spend a part of their lives fighting for justice and equality.
For Lula, who left office in 2010 with an approval rating of 87% and recently served 580 days in prison due to political persecution, the message is clear.
If we lose interest, if we have fear, if we don't take the streets, if we don't raise our voices and we don't demand our rights, then we are lost.
The party that was in power for 4 consecutive terms is determined to fight against the far right, but it will also seek to regain the trust of many in order to lead a social reconstruction that goes beyond the ballot box.
On Saturday, the Vice President of Argentina, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, visited Cuba to take part in the 12th International Havana Book Fair. During a conversation with the press after the presentation of her autobiography, Fernández spoke about the need for the International Monetary Fund to establish a significant reduction of the massive debt incurred by Argentina's previous administration.
The IMF should at least establish a substantial reduction of the debt, because a loan was made outside of the International Monetary Fund, compromising 60% of the lending capacity of the multilateral body. On the other hand, this loan was made in violation of the obligations of the International Monetary Fund itself. The first thing we have to do to be able to pay is to get out of the recession. If there's a recession, no one's going to pay half a cent to the IMF. And the only way to come out of our recession is with a big investment by the state.
And the president of Argentina, Alberto Fernández, finished the tour of Europe this week, in which he sought international support for the renegotiation of his nation's debt with the International Monetary Fund.
During the meetings that President Alberto Fernández held during his visit to the old continent, he shared the reality of Argentina's deep economic crisis with Pope Francis, numerous heads of state, entrepreneurs, human rights organizations, and students.
I come from a country where 40% of the population live below the poverty line. My first obsession is to bring poverty rates back down and to give food to those that are hungry. Argentina has many other problems, all of them happening at the same time, when we are besieged by a massive debt that was irresponsibly taken in a short span of time.
Fernandez warned in all of his meetings that during the 4 years of Mauricio Macri's administration, the former president sold a reality that didn't exist in Argentina, as figures showed every day that people were being further damaged.
We want to develop policies of solidarity to help those most vulnerable and to distribute incomes with more equality. It is not an impossible task. The major problem in Latin America is inequality, the gap that separates the rich from the poor. Wealth is condensed among the few, and poverty is spread among millions. How long can we live with such inequality?
Support from the Vatican, Italy, Spain, Germany, and France for Argentina to restructure its debt with the IMF were impactful. Even the IMF issued a statement acknowledging that Macri's debt was unpayable.
They are dismantling one of the cornerstones Macri used to sell his internal policies, based on looting and external dependency, which was what were left out of the world. But this tour is proving that Argentina is an important nation, a serious nation, that can honor its debts. To us, it matters seeing Argentina as a country that is respected.
Juliana Marino also says that the way in which Argentina can eventually pay off its debt could be transcendental, since it could pave the way for other indebted nations to right themselves from those shackles.
This tour has great political impact, not only in Argentina. It shows that previous progressive governments didn't isolate themselves from the world or from Latin America. The president's sincerity has shown that he has the will to achieve his goals.
On the last day of his tour, President Fernandez also met with human rights organizations and the heads of a mining giant.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Statements made by fugitive Colombian Senator Aida Merlano in Venezuela have confirmed the criminal ties that run deep in sectors of Colombia's political class. We have more in this report.
Following the statements of former Senator Aida Merlano that confirmed previous reports of illegal activities by Colombian politicians to stay in power, the case of the Gerlain and Char families in the city of Barranquilla has regained relevance.
This Char family, of which 9 assembly members are part of, act as if they were presidents. Alex Char was the mayor of Barranquilla until 1 month ago, and will allegedly be running for president. They are looking to ally themselves with Uribismo. That is why they entered the government, to find advantageous alliance ahead of the next elections, and their strategy could be one of the strong options for the 2022 elections. But obviously, the Aida Merlano case will cast a large shadow, and it may prevent them from running for office.
What Aida Merlano said in Caracas was an open secret. Many sectors of Colombia had not only already denounced the same crimes at various courts, but also in Congress. The schemes the right wing uses to remain in power were widely known, making clear the relationships between paramilitary groups and politicians, as is the case of former president and current senator Álvaro Uribe, who is involved in various investigations that have suspiciously been stalled.
All of the illegal activities by Uribe Vélez are of public knowledge, but sadly the justice system in this country does not work. How many accusations have been made against him? I believe there are 202. But up until now, the investigations have not moved forward at all. At the moment, we are preparing a case against his brother for paramilitary activities.
With Aida Merlano's statement, the criminal mafias in Colombia have once again been made public, and are something that, for many experts, have been going on forever.
She is a reflection of Colombia's political class, and she was forced to flee the country and ask for protection because her life was at risk by players that have always been involved in politics in this country.
Colombia's Supreme Court has requested that Merlano's extradition be expedited via Colombia's foreign ministry, but President Iván Duque has not shown his willingness to move ahead with the process, as he refuses to make the request to the constitutional government of President Nicolás Maduro, while the Bolivarian government has shown its willingness to resume consular relations with Colombia.
Moving to Africa now, at least 8 people have been killed and 20 are reportedly missing after a militia attack in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Some hundreds of families had to flee from their homes after a rebel group, the Allied Democratic Forces, attacked the area. The DRC Army has launched an operation to flush out the ADF militia, which has been blamed for killing more than 1,000 civilians in Beni since October of 2014. Local police are also still searching for those missing. Cameroonians have voted in general election despite violent threats from separatist groups and calls for a boycott by the opposition. Security forces were deployed to protect voters in the southwest region, one of the 2 provinces gripped by bloody separatist violence. But thankfully, no instances of violence have been reported. The Central African country's legislative and local council elections happened for the first time in 7 years after 2 previous delays. The results are expected to be announced in 20 days.
I'm satisfied to cast my vote, and I'm happy because at least there's security to protect each and every one of us who come here today to vote.
I want to vote because you see, it is good to put someone on the seat, the person that you love with your heart, that this person can do something better.
African heads of state gathered in Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa for a 2-day summit on peace building. The African Union Summit, named Silencing the Guns, seeks to find ways of resolving conflicts across the continent and to resolve the security situation in war-torn nations. The leaders are also set to review a goal adopted by the AU in 2013 of ending all wars in Africa by 2020.
The Horn of Africa, the Sahel and the Lake Chad Basin are today at war, a real war, where military and civilians are dying by the dozens almost every week. Thousands of children have seen their schools closed, either because they are destroyed or because teachers and school children have been forced to flee.
A far-reaching joint AU-UN framework on peace and security on the continent. I commend the African Union for making Silencing the Guns such a prominent part of its work by 2020.
The participants of the Africa Union Summit also firmly rejected the United States and Israel's so-called Middle East plan.
With regards to the US-inspired plan for the Palestinians, that as I listened to it and as I read everything that's written about it, it brought to mind a horrible history that we as South Africa have gone through.
The case of Palestine best illustrates the fragility of international commitments. The American-Israeli plan, described as the deal of the century, conceived and drawn without any international consultation, and worse still, in the absence of the main concerned parties, the Palestinians, is yet another violation of multiple United Nations and African Union resolutions, and further disregard for the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Vote counting continues in Ireland after Saturday's general elections, with anticipated results showing there is a 3-way tie between the main political parties. According to exit polls, ruling right-wing Fianna Gael, conservative Fianna Fáil, and left-wing nationalist Sinn Féin all received 22% of the vote. The current predicted outcome means that a coalition government could be inevitable, with Sinn Féin the central player, despite a long history of both conservative parties refusing to work with them. The unprecedented surge in support for Sinn Féin came as voters said they hope to break the historic duopoly of the conservative parties and bring change to the nation.
It's a big statement of change. It is a big statement that this is no longer a two-party system. It's a statement that people want a different type of government, and that people have great confidence in us, and I say that with all humility, and I deeply, deeply appreciate that. the best outcome is a government without Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. So that's the first thing that I want to test, whether or not that is possible. I also have consistently said that I will talk to and listen to everybody. I think that's what grown-ups do. I think that's what democracy demands. This is not a protest vote. This is certainly an election that is historic in proportions. This is changing the shape and the mould of Irish politics. This is not a transient thing. This is just the beginning.
Moving on Sunday morning, sharp shooters in Thailand killed a gunman who opened fire at a mall in Nakhon Ratchasima, killing 29 people. The soldier behind the massacre was shot dead after a gunfight that lasted more than 17 hours. The gunman used a stolen machine gun and rifles from one of Thailand's largest barracks to carry out the attack. Citizens held a vigil on Sunday for the victims of the horrific massacre. Friends and relatives of those killed gathered in Nakhon Ratchasima holding candles, while monks chanted prayers for the dead and injured.
I want to give condolences to the victims, even though they are not my family. I am saddened by what happened. Thailand has never seen anything like this. Everybody is in shock and asking how our safety in the future will be guaranteed, and how to prevent this kind of incident from happening again.
Hundreds of people gathered in India's capital to campaign for an end to gender-based violence. People from several gender justice organizations showed up in New Delhi as part of the 1 Billion Rising campaign to combat rape and sexual violence against women and girls. According to a 2018 study, India ranks as the most dangerous country for women due to the high risk of sexual violence and being forced into slave labor.
1 billion people, men, women and children who love and respect women, should rise and say, no more violence, enough is enough.
We all need to stand up because it could be anybody, it could be me next. We need to understand that. So things have changed, but I think a lot more needs to be done. So we have to keep the momentum on for this movement.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media as well. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.